Let's start off this part by talking about checkpoints. They're a fairly core entity, and they allow the player to save the game and respawn after dying. They're activated only through collisions, and they require a unique ID value. Once again, I suggest using the X grid position as the ID value. Chances are you won't have two checkpoints on the same X grid spot, but if you do, just change the ID value. The topmost parameter allows you to disable the checkpoint at start, which is useful if you want the checkpoint to only be active after the player has completed a task and you also want that task to be saved. Starting MIG mode is used strictly in zero gravity in case you want a checkpoint in the middle of zero gravity and want to make sure that when the player loads this game or respawns, he starts back in his zero gravity state with his bubble and everything. Background on load sets the default background here on load. It's already saved when you hit a checkpoint, so you very rarely have to use this, but it can come in handy. Load start is for optimization, and it only works linearly from left to right, but that is the most common level type for Mayhem. So if you set this to, say, 53 right here, anything below the X position of 53, like all items, everything before this point is not going to be loaded. It's not only good for optimization, but it is also good in case you don't want players to see an enemy behind them after they've spawned in. Of course, you can also use save state, which is on by default to not spawn any enemies you've already killed, but load start can prevent enemies spared by the player from spawning as well. There's one tab we haven't touched on yet, and it's a doozy. Down here, cutscenes. It's a fully fledged cutscene editor with dialogue, minor scripting, and event lists. And let's open up map 3. It might not have sat right with you that you could see the boss and it will move towards you without you even touching this trigger. So, what can we do differently? We can start a cutscene. Let's go to the entity editor, cutscene parameter on triggers. Let's type in boss intro and then apply. Okay, unlike maps, you need an event before you can save. You also need a file name. Boss intro is the one we set before, and the event, we will just set the camera target for where the camera will go during this event. We'll enter null here because there will be no dialogue. The event name is boss. Click the add button and now you can save it. But first, let's take a look at these options. Manual camera, which is the option that allows you to set the camera during events. Otherwise, it will be player controlled. Skippable lets you press escape to skip the cutscene. And passive cutscene will let the dialogue continue without pressing any buttons. We want to keep it as is right now and save the whole cutscene with this button. And now,
Yay!
Try out the first event. So we go to the entity changer tool, put this over here, delete this, spawn ID, let's set it to 41. Correction, set it to 35. Of course, there's one more step before this is spawned with the trigger. It's the spawn area value needing to be set at least to 2. Each value here is 1 screen space of length, so.
Yay!
Something else we can do now, though, is lock the camera more efficiently. This camera right now is triggered by this trigger. It can be triggered by a cutscene event, which is what we want. Let's give this camera a unique value now, 350. Don't try to jumble up these values too much, though. So we go back to the cutscene. Okay, so we want to make a new event. Double-click this to copy this camera target, which is important. Null we will change later, because we might want dialogue with the boss. So change this to trigger. Event duration, let's not touch right now. And the trigger is 350. And we add, and we save. So this, it needs a trigger object. So we need to create one with the ID of 350. Save that. So this cutscene right here will trigger this trigger here, which will trigger this camera lock. It's important to note that these entities will not be loaded because they're below the boundary line. Took me a while to figure that out. So you have to go ahead and copy and paste them up there. And with that settled, we can run the game and test the cutscene. As you can see, the map border's been changed. So this is all in order now. But let's add some dialogue. Let's open our cutscene up again. This trigger event could have some dialogue easily.
Using right-click and left-click on the portrait will cycle it backwards and forwards, respectively.
Make sure to save the cutscene and then let's try it out. I will quickly run through other features. The open mod button is here. This is the Steam Workshop submission area. It will tell you what's missing before you can submit down there. There's a submission title, the preview image. You can use that background image from your ending screen if you want. Comma separated tabs. A short description. And then you have to type in a longer description. And then as it says down here, you need to zip your mod folder because workshop files are only a single file. The game does all the work for you. You press submit and wait for it to upload.
Yay!
You can also look at the files uploaded on the cloud server. And unfortunately, a limitation in the QuickTeam Steamworks add-on makes it unable for you to edit an existing submission. So if you try to submit the same thing again, it will give you an error. So every submission should be polished before submission, otherwise you're going to have to delete and resubmit, which is a gigantic pain, but QuickTeam has not responded to me. And now I will show you how to play your game. Everything's pretty user-friendly here. You just go to your mods, and it should be in the list automatically. You press start, and it'll start you at the place you chose. You can change rooms, everything works. It's a miracle. Get your gun. And we all made this together. We should all be proud. Greetings. Exciting boss gameplay. And we beat it. It's a glorious ending. Wipe the tear from your eye, and you've now hopefully learned how to use the Mayhem level editor.